Hi, I'm Mark Josie, Senior Vice President of the Business Outcomes Practice.
I'm Chris McChesney, co-author of the 4 Disciplines of Execution. Welcome to the on-demand version of Execute Your Must-Win Strategy.
Today we're going to talk about 3 things. First, defining your target. Second, moving your performance curve. Third, how do you measure it? To start with, let's talk about a framework for thinking about execution.
The easiest way to think about execution is to take the elements of your strategy today and break them into 3 categories. The first category we call stroke of the pen. Those are all the elements of your strategy that can be executed because you said so. These are things that can be done with a mandate, they can be done with money, they might have huge consequences, they may take brains, they may take guts, but they're going to happen because you said so. On the other side, take those elements of the plan associated with your daily whirlwind, with everything required to maintain the operation today. All of your key performance indicators, all of the elements of your strategy that are part of sustaining the operation, keeping the doors open. Now, as you do that, as you start to organize all of your elements into those 2 categories, you realize that not everything fits. There are some things that are critically important, but you can't get it done with a mandate. You can't buy that. And they're not going to happen in the normal course of events in the whirlwind. These elements we call breakthroughs. Inevitably, they require a change in human behavior or a high degree of human engagement. Mark, give us an example.
So let's take a sales target. Let's say I'm a chief sales officer and I've got to hit a $100 million goal. The first place that I'm going to look is I'm going to look at my day job or my whirlwind. Because in that bucket I've got my existing clients, my renewal contracts, my existing buyers. I could even look at the existing capabilities of my salespeople, and maybe out of that bucket I might get $70 million. The next place I'm going to look is in the stroke of the pen bucket. Over there I can make some decisions on hiring some new salespeople. I could decide to hire 20 new salespeople. I could raise our prices. I could look at a marketing campaign. I could do some incentives for salespeople, and I might think in that bucket I could get 10 million. So between my 70 and my 10 million, I get $80 million. I'm $20 million short. So the $20 million gap, I got to find a way to hit that breakthrough result by having people to either have to learn something new or do something different or do something more consistent. That's what that breakthrough result is.
Inevitably, the hardest part of the breakthrough, ironically, is the whirlwind. To be more specific, losing to the whirlwind, the day job, the urgency of everything that happens to maintain the 70 million that Mark is talking about. The nature of those activities is urgent. They're immediate. They're happening right now. And urgency tends to rule human behavior and what we work on. The breakthrough, those are critical. Those are important. We might agree with them, but they rarely have the same degree of urgency as the activities in the day job. When you think about critical breakthroughs that have failed, inevitably what you'll see is that they were choked or starved by the day job, by the whirlwind.
So suppose your breakthrough result is around selling new product. The way you're going to get to that $20 million is to sell a new product that's currently not being adopted by your sales force right now. So if you have 1,000 salespeople and you're the chief sales officer and you got to get adoption of selling this new product to hit that $20 million, you've probably got 3 buckets or 3 categories of salespeople. Your first category is you have some pockets of greatness. You probably have 20% of that 1,000-person sales force, 200 people that are really good at selling that product. They're great at positioning it. They're great at resolving concerns. They're great with their value prop. So they've got it down and they're doing great. You've also got that middle, probably 60% of your sales force that's just caught up in the day-to-day activities of the whirlwind that Chris talked about, that are capable of selling that product, but just aren't. they're not focused on it, they maybe don't feel accountable for it, they don't have the capabilities or the skill sets to sell it. And then you've got that third category, the third bucket, which is your other 20%, your bottom 20%, which is what I call your never group. That's the group that you can train them, you can coach them, you can send them money and incent them. They're just not ever going to do it. So the key challenge is, how do you move the big opportunity, which is in the middle? How do you move the middle? How do you institutionalize high performance sales behaviors around selling that new product at scale? So when you think about it, what percentage is in your top bucket of your top performers, your pockets of greatness? What percentage is in the middle? And what percentage is at the end, the nevers?
In our experience, leaders get that they have a curve. People understand that there is a performance curve around a breakthrough. In a sense, we have to accept the fact that because of human nature, there is always going to be a curve. But what you don't have to accept is the shape of that curve. To accept the shape of the curve as it is today is, in a sense, giving up on execution. And when you give up on execution, Mark, what are you left with?
The only thing you have left is to change your strategy, basically.
There's a lot of organizations that do that a lot.
Yeah, so Chris, what do you do? Let's talk about this. What do you do when you don't accept the shape of your curve? How do you actually move your performance curve? Let's talk about the methodology, the 4 disciplines of execution, and how the 4 disciplines of execution is all about moving that curve.
That really is the question that started all of our work 20 years ago. How do you move that curve? How do you execute a strategy that requires a significant change in human behavior or a high degree of engagement? The first of those 4 disciplines is focus on the wildly important. People get this intuitively. They know it has to start with focus. But let's think a little bit about this. The word focus in this context has 2 meanings. The first we've already been talking about, narrowing the focus, right? In addition to all of the things you could focus on, Mark talked about that critical breakthrough around that new product line and the behaviors that were going to go with it, right? That's one way to think about focus, narrowing the focus. The other way to think about focus is like focusing a camera, bringing something into focus. The way that we do that is to move from a concept, the concept of, wow, we need more revenue from that new product, right? To an actual target. We're gonna go from $5 million to $20 million in target X by the end of the year. Right? It has a starting line, it has a finish line, and it has a deadline. Folks, the language of execution is targets. This happens at a strategic level, but this also happens throughout the organization on a team-by-team basis. What is the target that the individual teams can own, right? Maybe we're gonna go from 3 new product accounts to 6 new product accounts by June of this year. Discipline 1 is about translating strategic intent to the fewest number of executable targets at the front line of the organization. This is where good execution begins. Discipline 2 is act on the lead measures. If discipline 1 sets the target for the organization, for the teams, for what does winning look like? In addition to the day job, in addition to the whirlwind, how do we know if we're winning? If that's discipline 1, discipline 2 is all about how we are going to win. Discipline 2 is act on the lead measures. This is the discipline of leverage. If the wildly important goal, if the WIG, if that starting line, finish line, deadline on a team-by-team basis is like a heavy rock that's a little too heavy for us to move, or at least it has been a little too heavy for us to move. The lead measure, think about that like a lever. This is the principle of leverage. This is what lead measures create. Levers and lead measures have 2 characteristics. First, They are influenceable. The rock's too heavy to move, but I can move the lever. I can move it. It is influenceable. And second, when the lever moves, the rock moves. People understand this principle most easily when it's applied to the challenge of weight loss. If the wildly important goal were to lose weight, that could be a very challenging thing. Lead measures for that would, of course, be diet and exercise, and more specifically, a measure around diet and a measure around exercise that we said, if achieved, and we feel like we could achieve it, we feel like we can move it, we can influence it, it would be predictive of the rock of weight loss actually moving. Let's go back to the sales example for a minute. If one of those teams that was associated with that goal had their wildly important goal to increase the number of new accounts in that product line, and that was their wildly important goal, we call that a lag measure. It's a results measure. It's after the fact. It's a lagging measure. It's like the weight loss example. What would the lead measures be? What would the lead measures look like? Well, it might look like talking to 7 accounts per week about the new offering per rep. It might look like engaging 3 new executive teams per month per rep. In our experience, these lead measures work best when the team has the final say in what they believe would work and what the team believes would be most influenceable and most predictive. When it comes to a breakthrough, we're not just looking for an important, critical target at the team level. We're looking for an important, critical, achievable target at the team level. Discipline 3 is keep a compelling scoreboard. Here's what we know. People play differently when they are keeping score. It's not that people play differently when their boss keeps score for them. Discipline 3 is all about engagement. And if they're not keeping score, if they're not into it, they are not engaged. What we've learned is that it is not enough to do disciplines 1 and 2. It is not enough to have a really specific critical target. It's not even enough for us to have lead measures that, if achieved, would achieve the target. And it's not enough even if the team came up with the lead measures and they believe them. Remember what we're up against. We're up against the day job. We're up against the whirlwind, and it is a worthy adversary. In Discipline 3, we take the work that we did in Discipline 1 and Discipline 2, and we go game on until it becomes real, until this thing becomes a scoreboard that everybody can look at and go, oh, we've been winning for 3 weeks. It looks like we're going to end this week with a loss. Like, until there's that kind of tension on an achievable game, we rarely see engagement. And for whatever reason, it needs to show up and look like a scoreboard, like the games people naturally play. And it's not the kind of data that the coach at the game gets, okay? We call those coaches' scoreboards. You need those, you use those. Those are a big deal. They look like spreadsheets. We get it. That's a big, coach's data is a big deal. In Discipline 3, we create a player's scoreboard. And for a breakthrough, that is absolutely essential. In Disciplines 1, 2, and 3, each team creates a high-stakes but winnable game aimed at the most critical breakthrough for the organization. Discipline 4 is how you play the game. In Discipline 4, every team that has a wildly important goal, lead measures, and a compelling scoreboard meet every week for no more than 20 minutes. And in that meeting, we're going to put force against leverage. Until we get to Discipline 4, no behaviors have necessarily changed. The behavior change really happens here. In this meeting, each person makes a commitment to the team to one or two things outside the whirlwind that they're going to do to ensure that those lead measures happen. If we go back to our sales example, and I'm on a team that wants to increase the number of new product accounts, and I have a lead measure for 3 executive overviews per month, and I realize that I've been working on this and I am out of fresh prospects. I don't have any more people to call. What's my commitment? All right, I am going to commit that by Wednesday of next week, I will have identified 14 new prospects. Now, a couple interesting things about that commitment. It came from me, it wasn't given to me by my boss. I am the one looking at the strategic bet as a player. Without this, you're not pulling engagement, you're just pushing compliance. The commitments have to come from the team. The other thing about this commitment is that 3 weeks ago, I didn't know this was going to need to be a commitment. Most of the activities required to drive innovative breakthrough strategies, you can't plan for in advance. Discipline 4 is about creating a cadence of a very different kind of accountability. And until that's created, we don't see real behavior change start to happen.
So the next question is, how do you know your performance curve is moving? How do you know you're getting tighter and righter? How do you know that you're on pace or not? You can't manage something if you can't measure it. We have a vital metric called XPS. XPS stands for your execution performance score. And simply put, XPS measures the amount of energy and engagement that you're putting against your key strategic target, your breakthrough result. XPS also measures those 4 elements that Chris talked about: focus, leverage, engagement, and accountability. If you were to take the team that we talked about earlier, that sales team of 1,000 people, and you were to put them on a distribution curve with an associated XPS score, you would know who's on pace, who's being inconsistent, and who's off track. Our goal is to put strategy execution in the palm of your hand.
Execution does not like complexity. The 2 best friends of execution are simplicity and transparency. Think of the 4 disciplines of execution as a framework for leaders to create simplicity and transparency against the critical breakthrough for moving their strategy forward. I will tell you, though, it does something else. When individuals, when members of teams feel like they are winning against a critical objective that really matters, it has an extraordinary impact on morale and engagement. To learn more, click the link on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us.